Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're going to read chapter 2 from Canto 9 of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam from the book Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Canto 9, Celestial Dynasties, and the chapter number 2 is Manu's Descendants. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhete girim yat kripa tamam vande shigrum din tarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tatsat. Chapter 2. Parikshit said, Dear Master, you said Vaivasvat Muni Manu had 10 sons and 1 daughter, Ila. Please tell me about those sons. Shukadev said, Vaivasvat's other sons were conceived after Sudyumna retired to the forest to pursue spiritual advancement. Before impregnating his wife, Vaivasvat went to the banks of the Yamuna and performed severe austerities for 100 years. At the end of that period, he worshipped the Supreme Lord, by whose grace he begot 10 sons, such as powerful and virtuous as himself. The eldest of these was Ikshvaku. 2 of these sons attained perfection, Kavi and Prishadra. Parikshit said, Please tell me about them first. Parishadra's history is fascinating. Said Shukadev, his spiritual master Vashishtha ordered him to protect the cows. He would regularly stand guard all night, his sword in hand. Listen to what happened one night. Parishadra sat in his small hut, his sword by his side. A thick cloud covered the sky. Fierce rain beat down, pounding the wet earth with a steady drumming sound. All around his hut, cows lowed in their shelters. Parishadra stayed alert, sometimes walking around in the rain to ensure no predators prowled nearby. Nothing was visible, but he could hear the cows jostling against each other, pushing into the fencing that enclosed them. Every muscle in Parishadra's body tensed and prepared for action. What danger had they sensed? A fierce growl rented the night air, and panicked cows bellowed loudly. Parishadra bounded toward the predatory sound. In the darkness, he saw what he thought was a large cat wrestling down a cow. Raising his sound, he brought it down on the predator's neck, severing its head. The frightened cow leapt away. Wet and panting, Parishadra crouched beside his kill, firmly clutching his sword. If the predator was a tiger, there was no more danger. They always hunt alone. But if it was lion, he needed to stay alert. They hunted in packs. As the dawn broke, Parishadra stood and stretched himself. He stretched himself. He wanted to remove the dead cat's body and count the herd before he reported to his spiritual master. Sheathing his sword, he bent to pick up the carcass. His heart sank, and he cried loud, Vishnu! Lying in a pool of blood was the decapitated carcass of a cow. In the darkness and confusion of the night, he had killed the cow, not the predator. Near the cow's bloody head was a furry ear with a white spot on the back. Parishadra stooped and scrutinized a tiger. He must have sliced off its ear, and the injured animal fled in fear. Tears of frustration and grief streaked Parishadra's muddied face. Not even stopping to bathe and refresh himself, he hurried to Vashishtha's dwelling, where he found his spiritual master sitting by the sacred fire, intoning Vedic mantras. Falling prostrate before him, Parishadra cried, Master, forgive me. In the confusion and darkness of the night, I could not distinguish between the predator and its prey, and I accidentally killed one of the cows. Parishadra's sudden entrance and the sad news of the cow's death shocked and angered Vashishtha. Standing up, he pointed at Parishadra, In your next life, you shall not be a Kshatriya. You shall take birth as a Shudra for the sin of killing a cow. Parishadra folded his palms and bowed his head. Master, I accept your curse. Please give me a permission. and blessings to leave for the forest, I shall practice strict celibacy and fix my mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Perhaps I may thus gradually redeem myself. Vashishta's demeanor softened. He regretted his outburst of anger. Raising his right hand in blessing, he said, "May you succeed in your vow of brahmacharya, which is approved by all great sages." Parikshit said, Did Prishadra take birth as a Shudra in his next life? No. Freed from all responsibilities, he became peaceful in mind and gained control over his senses. He practiced being satisfied with whatever came out of its own accord, treating everyone equally and always seeing Krishna's hand in every situation. In this way, he traveled all over the world. Unattached to any material situation, acting as if he were deaf, dumb, and blind. Eventually, he became a great saint. One day, while walking in a forest, he saw a blazing fire. He entered it and returned to the transcendental spiritual world. Thus, he avoided the terrible consequence of becoming a Shudra. Parikshit sighed. Prishadra's unswerving faith is inspiring, surely. Furthermore, his history instructs us that a faithful devotee is unaffected by karmic reactions. Parikshit asked how Kavi had achieved perfection, and Shukadev replied, from his early childhood, Manu's youngest son Kavi was reluctant to accept material enjoyment. Accompanied by a few friends, he left his father's kingdom for the forest even before attaining full youth. Always thinking of the self-effulgent Supreme Lord within the core of his heart, he attained perfection. Please tell me about the descendants of Vaivasvat, Manu's other sons. Shukadev briefly spoke about Karusha's and Drishta's offspring. Karusha's dynasty were Kshatriyas who governed the northern region. They were very religious and famous for protecting Brahmins. Drishta's progeny were initially Kshatriyas, but they later qualified to be Brahmins. Shukadev then traced 7 generations of Nriga's descendants, concluding with a daughter named Ogavati who married Sudarshana. He then traced 11 generations of Narishyanta's descendants, among whom was the celebrated saint, the fire god Agniveshya, also known as Kanina and Jatu Karnya. Agniveshya's progeny were Brahmins whose dynasty became known as Agni Veshayana. Shukadev said, now listen as I describe the descendants of Dishta. His son was the Vaishya Nabhag, who is not to be confused with another of Vaivasvata's descendants of the same name, whom I shall speak about shortly. He then listed 30 generations of Nabhag's descendants, among whom was the Emperor Marut, who was the great mystic Samvarta, engaged in performing a sacrifice. Shukadev took a moment to stress the incomparable opulence of Marut's sacrifice. In that ceremony, Indra had become intoxicated by drinking large quantities of somaras. The Brahmins received ample charity and were thus very satisfied. The administrative gods personally offered food preparations for the sacrifice, and the celestial Vishwadevas were members of the assembly. Shukadev also spoke about Dishta's descendant, Trinabindu, who married an Apsara girl named Alambhusha. They had 1 daughter and 3 sons. Their daughter Ilavila married the great mystic yogi Vishrava, who begot in her womb Kuber, who is famous as the giver of the wealth. Among Trinabindu's 3 sons, Shukadev listed 8 generations of Vishala's descendants, concluding with Janmejya. So this brings us to the end of chapter 2, Manu's descendants. We'll continue with chapter 3 next time. Thank you for joining. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.